When you look at USAID, that's a fraud. The whole thing is a fraud.
We all know about the bitter drama going on between USAID, Elon Musk, and President Donald Trump.
President Trump directed his corrupt billionaire friend, Elon Musk, to ransack a critical agency of the U.S. government,
along with their plans to dissolve the organization.
Without providing any proof, Elon said USAID is a criminal organization.
This drama has led many citizens to rally behind the organization.
Elon Musk has got to go! Hey! Elon Musk has got...
begging for it not to be dissolved. Now, while all of this is true, something unbelievable happened.
For International Development, or USAID, who are now cleaning out their desks today.
One of Musk's drones caught something shocking inside the USAID building. And from the look of things, it only seems like the situation is getting messier for the organization.
We must, as a people, appeal to the consciousness of those moderate Republicans.
And we have no idea how they'll get out of this one. All of this information begs the question, what exactly did Musk's drone capture inside the building? And just how bad are things for USAID? Join us as we get into all the details.
To make sure that we uphold the rule of law, stop this illegal shutdown of AID.
The shocking discovery. Following the recent drama going on in the USAID's headquarters, we can say things will die down soon. Can we all remember just a couple of weeks ago when the FBI uncovered a $100 billion fraud within the very organization that is meant to put the people's needs before theirs?
This man with billions of dollars of investment. Lastly, what Trump and Musk have done is not only wrong.
Well, it seems as though the truth of the USAID's officials' corruption and selfishness is finally coming to light. But hold on to your seats because this is where it gets really interesting. While there was a protest going on about why USAID should not be shut down,
they're dismantling USAID. They shut down the doors. They brought down banners.
Elon took it upon himself to dig deeper into the growing controversy surrounding USAID.
So, do you see it as a worthy cause, USAID?
We are moving fast, so we will make mistakes, but we'll also fix the mistakes very quickly.
Elon decided to investigate the situation by flying a drone into the USAID's building, and you would not believe what he saw. According to sources, his findings were so shocking that even he was taken aback. Many people believe this discovery could serve as the turning point. The moment when the public finally realizes Musk had been right all along. Could this be the final nail in USAID's coffin? Stay tuned as we get into all the details of this new discovery. Following the sudden purge in USAID's office, former USAID employees and advocates for people with HIV took to the U.S. Capitol building to protest. And the major reason for their protest was to issue a warning that Donald Trump's efforts to dismantle the USAID.
There's no reason for USAID when you look at the politicians that have been in there sucking the blood out of it.
The very agency responsible for implementing foreign aid could jeopardize the fight against HIV demonstrators, wearing white t-shirts that read, AIDS funding cuts, kill enchanting slogans such as Congress has blood on its hands. Unfreeze Aid Now staged a die-in at the rotunda of the Cannon House office building. But before the protest, Asia Russell, executive director of Health Gap, a global advocacy group against HIV, urged the Congress to take action rather than just watch. She stated that lawmakers needed to stop acting passively in the face of what she described as an attack on humanitarian assistance that was both highly effective and life-saving.
These people, half of whom have no access to life-saving HIV treatment.
She emphasized that the importance of humanitarian aid could not be overstated. The protest came as USAID remained frozen by the Trump administration's rapid moves to close the agency. The Trump administration is moving quickly to dismantle USAID, leaving thousands of employees either fired or placed on leave. In a move many have called cold and disrespectful, workers were given just 15 minutes to clear out their offices before being escorted out. The crackdown was brutal. On Monday, February 19th, about $4,080 million of USAID employees worldwide were placed on leave, while an additional 1,600 were fired outright.
The second thing we are going to do is we are going to fight this legally in every way we can.
It's clear that all of this was carried out by Trump's administration. Their justification? That USAID was outdated, corrupt, and wasteful. While this may be their own truth, critics believe otherwise. In fact, they claim this sudden purge is an unprecedented attack on a long-standing foreign aid institution. Among the people backing Elon and his unlikely ally, Trump is none other than federal judge Carl Nichols. He has outrightly cleared the way for the mass terminations to continue, rejecting pleas to stall the removals. Meanwhile, some staffers stranded overseas are desperately fighting to return home as the administration cuts off emergency communications and medical evacuations. U.S. District Judge Carl Nichols rejected pleas to keep his temporary stay on the government's plan to remove all but a small fraction of USAID staffers from their posts.
And we will not stand for anything less than USAID fully functioning and supporting our government.
His ruling also allows the administration to start the clock ticking on its planned 30-day deadline for USAID workers abroad to move back to the U.S. at government expense. His ruling comes in a broad lawsuit filed by unions on behalf of the agency staff.
We don't have a fourth branch of government called Elon Musk, and that's going to become real clear.
Especially those at risk of being stranded abroad. The suit describes the Trump administration stalling needed medical evacuations for USAID staffers and spouses overseas, cutting some contractors off from emergency communications, and leaving staffers to flee political violence in Congo without support or funding. The lawsuit more broadly challenges the constitutionality of the administration's dismantling of USAID, arguing that eliminating an agency would require congressional approval. Building on this challenge, Trump and Musk have moved swiftly to shutter the foreign aid agency, calling its programs out of line with the president's agenda and saying that its work is wasteful. What makes their effort even more extraordinary is that it has not involved Congress, the very body that authorized and funded the agency. A report from the Congressional Research Service earlier this January reinforced this point, stating that congressional authorization is required to abolish, move, or consolidate USAID. Yet, despite this legal requirement, the Republican majorities in the House and Senate have offered no resistance to the administration's actions. The administration, in turn, claims there is little left to fund, announcing that it is eliminating more than 90% of USAID's foreign aid contracts and cutting $60 billion in U.S. assistance worldwide.
That's right. So the administration canceled all of this money in foreign assistance.
As these sweeping changes take effect, uncertainty looms over the fate of the more than 5,600 USAID employees who have been fired or placed on leave.
1,000 federal employees, many of whom work for USAID.
The number of affected workers at the agency's Washington headquarters remains unclear. Meanwhile, a notice on the agency's website informs staff at other locations that they will have the opportunity to collect their personal belongings at a later date. The notice also details specific instructions for when groups of employees should arrive, requiring them to be screened by security and escorted to their former workspaces. Those being dismissed must return all USAID-issued assets, while employees on administrative leave are directed to retain their agency-issued materials, including diplomatic passports, until such time that they are separated from the agency. For many USAID workers, these retrieval procedures feel demeaning. Adding to this, the notice explicitly warns employees not to bring weapons, including firearms, spear guns, and hand grenades, and grants them only 15 minutes at their former workstations. These restrictions underscore the administration's broader efforts to slash the federal government, a campaign that has sparked multiple lawsuits. Yet despite these legal challenges, courts have thus far been unable to halt the shutdown of USAID.
So-called DOGE to shut down the Agency for International Development.
Amid this legal troubles, a federal judge on Tuesday imposed a deadline on the Trump administration to release billions of dollars in U.S. foreign aid, citing its failure to comply with his nearly 2-week-old court order to ease the funding freeze.
A lot of billions of dollars already in, what, 2 weeks?
Yes.
And it's going to go to numbers that you're not going to believe.
However, the battle over these funds took another turn late Wednesday.
And actual funding recipients that have riled Musk include mainstream media outlets like Politico,
when the Supreme Court temporarily blocked that order. Chief Justice John Roberts stated that the ruling would remain on hold until the High Court has a chance to weigh in more fully. This latest court action stems from a lawsuit filed by nonprofit organizations challenging the cutoff of foreign assistance through USAID and the State Department. Trump had frozen the funds through an executive order on his first day in office, justifying the move by portraying these programs as wasteful and misaligned with his foreign policy goals. The administration's actions have drawn criticism from lawmakers, including Virginia Democratic Representative Gerald Connolly, who condemned the treatment of USAID employees as unwarranted and unprecedented.
We are going to fight in every way we can, in the courts, in public opinion, with the bully pulpit.
Connolly, whose district includes a large federal workforce, defended the agency's workers as part of the world's premier development and foreign assistance agency, emphasizing their role in saving millions of lives every year. But this begs the question, what is the actual truth?
The president's pushing to close that agency that's helped millions of people around the world, saying there is waste, fraud, and corruption.
The Trump administration is actively working to dismantle the USAID, and in the process, a wave of false and misleading claims about its spending has flooded social media. Many believe that this misinformation is being deliberately pushed to justify the move, with administration officials and figures like Elon Musk playing a role in amplifying these claims. The controversy centers around allegations that USAID has been funding what critics describe as wasteful or unnecessary projects abroad, raising concerns about how taxpayer dollars are being spent. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre recently told reporters that USAID had funded several initiatives, including a $1.5 million grant,
$1.5 million to advance DEI in Serbia's workplaces,
to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, in Serbian workplaces, $70,000 for the production of a DEI-themed musical in Ireland,
$70,000 for a production of a DEI musical in Ireland,
$47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia,
$47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia,
and $32,000 for a transgender-focused comic book in Peru.
$32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru.
These claims were quickly picked up and spread across social media, fueling outrage over what some saw as a misuse of government funds. However, only one of these grants, the $1.5 million awarded to a Serbian organization called Grupa Izađi, actually came from USAID. The project's stated aim was to promote DEI in Serbia's workplaces and business communities. The other projects had no connection to USAID and were instead funded by the U.S. State Department's Office of the Undersecretary for Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs, which provides small grants to local organizations as part of U.S. diplomatic outreach. The DEI musical in Ireland, for example, was funded in 2022 with a $70,884 grant meant to highlight the shared values of diversity,
DEI in Serbia's workplaces, $70,000 for a production of a DEI musical in Ireland,
equity, inclusion, and accessibility between the U.S. and Ireland. The transgender opera in Colombia received $25,000 in State Department funding in 2021.
$47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia,
with an additional $20,000 coming from non-federal sources. The trans comic book in Peru, which was awarded $32,000 in 2022.
$32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru. I don't know about you, but as an American taxpayer,
was designed to address social and mental health issues through storytelling. Sean Roberts, a professor of international affairs at George Washington University and director of the school's International Development Studies Master's Program, explained that these kinds of small grants are a routine part of U.S. diplomacy. The goal is to support local initiatives that align with American values and strengthen ties between the United States and other nations. He noted that while some grants focus on democracy and governance, others, like these, are centered on diversity and inclusion. However, none of these projects were funded by USAID, despite claims suggesting otherwise. The misleading portrayal of USAID's role in these grants has added to growing concerns about how foreign aid is being discussed in public discourse. Rachel Bonifield, a senior fellow at the Center for Global Development, pointed out that misinformation about USAID's work has made it increasingly difficult to have an informed, good faith discussion about the agency's role and priorities. She emphasized the need for the public to rely on verified information, which is readily available, rather than unverified claims that spread online. Now, while everyone seems to have their own version of what the truth is, there was a particular claim about the USAID funding
that a lot of USAID staffers no longer have access to their email, and we learned about a security incident.
Boko Haram terrorists responsible for kidnapping and mass shooting in Nigeria. But more on this later on in the video. When asked about Leavitt's mischaracterization of these grants, White House Deputy Press Secretary Anna Kelly did not correct the record. Instead, she stated that the administration's pause on foreign aid spending was necessary to ensure taxpayer dollars align with American interests.
Do these receipts serve the interests of the American people? Is this a good use of the American taxpayers' money?
By not addressing the inaccuracies in Leavitt's statement, the administration allowed the misleading narrative to continue spreading. While debates about foreign aid and government spending are always valid, the facts matter. The reality is that many of the projects currently being criticized were not funded by USAID at all, yet claims from the Trump administration,
Congress's help to increase funding for Border Patrol and for ICE to increase detention capability in our facilities,
and their viral spread on social media have led to widespread confusion. As the administration continues its push to dismantle USAID, misinformation about the agency's work has only grown, making it more important than ever to separate fact from fiction. Major media outlets have been among those caught in the crossfire, with misleading claims falsely suggesting that USAID has been funneling millions of dollars to news organizations. The BBC, for example, was said to have received approximately $3.2 million during the 2023 to 2024 financial year. But that funding didn't go to its news division. Instead, it was directed to BBC Media Action, an international charity that is part of the BBC family, but remains editorially and financially separate from BBC News. The organization clarified in a statement that this funding made up about 8% of its budget and was used exclusively for its own projects, which are independent of BBC News journalism. The BBC itself, apart from BBC Media Action, is primarily funded by the UK's TV license fee and also generates income from commercial subsidiaries. Politico was also falsely accused of receiving large sums from USAID.
Of the funding from USAID to media outlets, including Politico, who I know has a seat in this room,
with widely shared social media posts claiming the outlet took in anywhere from $8 million to $34.3 million in 2024. In reality, USAID paid Politico only $44,000 in subscription fees for access to its content during the 2023 and 2024 financial years. Other government payments to the news site came from separate entities, but none constituted a subsidy. Politico's CEO, Goli Sheikh-ol-Islami, and editor-in-chief, John Harris, released a statement reaffirming that the organization is not government-funded. The Associated Press faced similar allegations, with claims that it had received USAID funding. However, according to a federal government database that tracks spending, AP has been paid $37.5 million by various government agencies since 2008, but none of it came from USAID. AP spokeswoman Lauren Easton explained that the U.S. government, like thousands of other organizations worldwide, simply licenses AP's nonpartisan journalism, a practice that has existed through both Democratic and Republican administrations. Governments routinely enter into such contracts with news organizations for access to their content, but this does not amount to funding or editorial influence. Foreign aid experts acknowledge that it is normal for a new administration to reevaluate how aid is allocated to ensure it aligns with their policy priorities. Elections have consequences, and each administration brings its own perspective on how U.S. interests should be represented abroad. However, experts warn that the narrative surrounding USAID has been distorted by misinformation, with critics making sweeping claims about its funding without understanding how the agency actually operates. There are certain motivations being assigned to USAID that don't really seem to square with the facts, and people are reaching conclusions without a clear understanding of what's happening, said Bonifield, a foreign aid specialist. While it is fair to debate whether all foreign aid expenses are necessary, she added, much of the outrage is based on incorrect assumptions rather than evidence. Roberts, another expert in the field, described the Trump administration's approach to USAID as shoot now, ask questions later, accusing it of using incendiary accusations based on nothing to stir controversy. He argued that this approach prevents any meaningful discussion about whether USAID's work is effective, what its true goals are, and whether reforms are needed. Instead of encouraging constructive dialogue, the administration's strategy appears to be aimed at undermining the agency through misinformation. Both Bonifield and Roberts agreed that a more thorough, fact-based review would be necessary to determine whether any instances of wasteful or inappropriate spending exist within USAID. However, they cautioned that sensationalized claims and politically motivated attacks only serve to obscure the bigger picture. For more than 60 years, USAID has been an independent agency providing humanitarian and development assistance across the globe. Regardless of where one stands on the future of USAID, the conversation about its role should be based on facts, not fiction. USAID Security Chief suspension. The turmoil within USAID has escalated into an internal power struggle, shaking the agency to its core. Two of its top security chiefs, John Voorhees and Brian McGill, have been placed on administrative leave after refusing to grant Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency access to classified systems. The move sent shockwaves through the agency, raising urgent questions about security, political interference, and the broader dismantling of federal institutions under the Trump administration. Despite initial resistance, DOGE employees managed to breach USAID's internal systems.
Musk has also been given access to the massive federal payment system, which includes Social Security payment information,
accessing critical databases and financial management software. This unauthorized entry has caused concerns over the exposure of classified information and sensitive personal data, with experts warning of unprecedented breaches in national security protocols. And the heart of the chaos is Elon Musk, the outspoken head of DOGE, who has made no secret of his disdain for USAID. On social media, Musk declared the agency a criminal organization and called for its complete shutdown, a sentiment that President Trump echoed, branding USAID officials as radical lunatics running a rogue operation. USAID is a criminal organization. Time for it to die. Elon Musk. The Trump administration's war on USAID is part of a broader effort to dismantle federal institutions, and the impact has been swift. Foreign aid programs have been frozen, USAID's website has gone dark, and mass layoffs have left employees in limbo. Meanwhile, DOGE, an agency ostensibly created to streamline government operations, has taken an aggressive, almost militaristic approach to its mission. Posing as State Department officials, DOGE representatives stormed USAID offices, demanding access to classified materials. When blocked, they allegedly threatened to summon U.S. Marshals. While DOGE spokesperson Katie Miller insists that no classified material was accessed without proper security clearances, growing evidence suggests otherwise. The controversy doesn't stop with USAID. DOGE has reportedly accessed highly sensitive databases within the Treasury Department, including Social Security and Medicare systems. The scale of this unauthorized access has alarmed lawmakers across party lines, with fears mounting over data privacy violations and the unchecked power of a government agency operating outside traditional oversight. For USAID employees, the chaos is nothing short of a nightmare. Many feel under surveillance, fearing retaliation or sudden termination. Contractors worry about not being paid due to system disruptions, and critical humanitarian aid efforts have ground to a halt. A senior USAID official described the situation as nothing less than a coup. The warp speed of this mafia-like takeover has shaken USAID staff to the core.
Hundreds of workers at the U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID.
But the implications of this power struggle extend far beyond USAID's headquarters. The administration is reportedly considering folding USAID into the State Department, a move that some experts argue would violate existing laws governing foreign aid. Such a consolidation would effectively erase USAID's independent authority.
An emotional exodus at the former headquarters of USAID,
placing global humanitarian efforts under direct political control. With foreign assistance already frozen, the future of U.S. international development remains uncertain, and the fallout could be catastrophic for vulnerable populations worldwide. Democrats have been quick to condemn the developments, with Senator Jeanne Shaheen warning that reports of unauthorized access to USAID's classified spaces are incredibly serious and unprecedented. The legal implications of DOGE's actions are still unfolding, and bipartisan concern is growing over whether Musk's agency has overstepped its authority in ways that could trigger major constitutional and security crises. As the battle for USAID's survival rages on, The agency's staff are calling on Republican senators, many of whom have historically supported USAID's mission, to intervene before it's too late. For now, the fate of USAID hangs in the balance. But one thing is clear. What's happening is not just about foreign aid. It's about power, control, and the future of how America engages with the world. Amid the chaos surrounding USAID, a more alarming question emerges. Is USAID funding criminal organizations? Boko Haram, which launched its violent insurgency in 2009, has been responsible for the deaths of thousands and the displacement of millions, particularly in Nigeria's northeast.
And now shifting to Africa, the military in Nigeria will release over 300 Boko Haram suspects.
Now, amidst all of the controversy, there have been claims that USAID was secretly funding the terrorist group. But this isn't the only terrorist group that USAID has been said to fund. When claims of USAID funding Boko Haram came out, United States Ambassador to Nigeria, Richard Mills, was first to deny all allegations.
There's no friend of Nigeria that has been stronger in its condemnation of the violence of Boko Haram.
According to Mills, there was no evidence to support these claims, so automatically the claims are baseless. Richard Mills, while addressing members of the Nigeria Governors Forum in Abuja, insisted that there was no evidence to support claims that USAID had been funding Boko Haram. However, his response appeared to be part of a broader effort to contain a growing diplomatic crisis, especially after U.S. Congressman Scott Perry made explosive allegations during a House subcommittee hearing. Perry described USAID as a taxpayer-funded slush fund for embezzlement and globalist excesses.
The United States of America, at maximum cost to the taxpayer, they would be hard-pressed to create a scheme more effective than USAID.
And claimed that the agency had been channeling funds to Boko Haram, the terrorist group responsible for thousands of deaths and mass displacement in Nigeria's northeast. Perry's remarks sent shockwaves across Nigeria, where the group has killed over 50,000 people and forced 2.5 million others to flee, many seeking refuge in neighboring countries such as Niger, Chad, and Cameroon. In response, the U.S. mission in Nigeria issued a statement on X, formerly Twitter, condemning Boko Haram for its blatant disregard for human life, while assuring Nigerians that comprehensive monitoring and evaluation systems are in place to help verify that U.S. assistance reaches intended recipients. Despite these reassurances, Perry's claims struck a nerve in Nigeria's political circles, reigniting suspicions about the role of international nonprofits in the region. The Nigerian Senate swiftly moved to address what it described as a weighty and worrisome issue, announcing plans to summon the country's top security chiefs, including the National Security Advisor, for a high-level session to investigate the alleged funding of terrorist activity. Senator Ali Ndoum, representing the northeastern region worst affected by Boko Haram's insurgency, emphasized the need for a thorough probe.
Issues of those that are involved directly or indirectly in Boko Haram activities.
He pointed out that Nigerian security agencies had, on multiple occasions, indirectly raised concerns about the activities of international NGOs operating in the region. Ndoum also recalled long-standing suspicions within the Borno state government about the operations of certain aid organizations. We have been wondering for years, aside from raids and kidnappings, where are these terrorists getting their funds from? It's worrisome, Ndoum said, underscoring the need to take Perry's allegations seriously. Now that a U.S. congressman has openly spoken about it, we could dismiss it as just an allegation. In a January interview with Al Jazeera, Nigerian military chief general Christopher Musa raised alarms about foreign funding sustaining Boko Haram for nearly 2 decades. He lamented that the Nigerian military's repeated efforts to suppress the insurgents had been undermined by foreign countries helping them with money and weapons. General Musa cited instances where Boko Haram fighters had been captured with funds allegedly linked to powerful foreign nations, suggesting that international actors might be complicit in supporting the group. Former Foreign Affairs Minister Professor Bolaji Akinyemi reinforced these concerns during a February 17th interview on Arise TV. He stated that while serving on the Boko Haram Committee, villagers had consistently reported sightings of helicopters flown by foreigners landing in Borno with arms, ammunition, and cash. Akinyemi, who had served as Nigeria's foreign minister during the Cold War, also argued that Western powers had worked to destabilize Nigeria for decades, tracing the trend back to British colonial rule. The controversy reached the U.S. Congress when Representative Scott Perry, during a February 13th House hearing, accused USAID of directly financing terror groups, including Boko Haram, Al-Qaeda, and ISIS. Perry alleged that USAID's annual budget of $697 million, which included cash payments to Islamic schools, might have inadvertently funded extremist training camps. He claimed that taxpayer money had been used to support organizations such as madrasas, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram, and ISIS Khorasan, warning that these funds were being directed to terrorist training camps. Disturbed by the allegations, the Nigerian Senate took swift action. On Wednesday, Senate President Godswill Akpabio announced that the National Security Advisor, Nuhu Ribadu, the Director General of the National Intelligence Agency, Mohammed, and the Director General of the State Security Services, Oluwatosin Ajayi, had been summoned to a closed-door session to address the claims that USAID had funded terrorist organizations.
It's the biggest donor in the world. It manages 60 missions in 130 nations,
including Boko Haram. The resolution to summon these top security officials followed a motion sponsored by Senator Ali Ndumi, Borno South, who expressed frustration over the persistent threat of Boko Haram despite heavy federal investment in counterterrorism operations. He emphasized the urgency of verifying the USAID allegations, urging the Senate to engage with top security chiefs to uncover the truth. Senator Kakashehu, who seconded the motion, noted that previous National Assembly investigations into Boko Haram had failed to curtail the group's activities. Similarly, Senator Abdul Ningi, Bauchi Central, stressed the necessity of compelling security heads to clarify the extent of foreign involvement in funding the insurgency. The motion gained widespread support among lawmakers. Senate President Akpabio reassured that if any evidence of USAID's involvement surfaced, the U.S. government would be expected to cooperate fully in an investigation with Nigerian authorities. Amid mounting diplomatic pressure, U.S. Ambassador to Nigeria Richard Mills categorically denied any diversion of USAID funds to Boko Haram. He insisted that there was no evidence to support such claims and added that if any program funding had ever been misused by Boko Haram, the U.S. would immediately investigate the matter with Nigerian authorities. Mills further stated that the U.S. government cooperated with Nigeria in security investigations and maintained strict policies to prevent USAID or any other U.S. assistance, whether from USAID, the Department of Defense, or the State Department, from being diverted to terrorist groups like Boko Haram. He emphasized that the United States remained committed to helping Nigeria eliminate Boko Haram. Describing the group as a major threat, he noted that the U.S. had officially designated Boko Haram as a foreign terrorist organization since 2013, which, according to him, had prevented the group from transferring assets to the U.S. and enabled the U.S. government to track, arrest, and seize its members. Despite the U.S. government's denial, protests erupted outside the headquarters of the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, on February 3, 2025. Demonstrators, including human rights activists and members of the Nigerian diaspora, gathered to demand transparency and accountability in USAID's financial operations. As tensions rise, both Washington and Abuja face mounting pressure to address the allegations with concrete evidence and decisive action. Do you think we will finally get answers to the long-awaited questions about how USAID funds were actually spent? And do you think more corrupt officials will be outed? Let us know in the comments. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the following video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.